Abortion happens every day. Millions of people around the world will have an abortion each year, but the majority of those people will never talk about their abortion experiences. What if millions of people broke their silence and told the truth about their lives and their choices? This is Melissa Madera in Granville, Ohio, and you're listening to the Abortion Diary podcast. These are the stories we share.
In college, I was a clinic escort for several years. When I went to school in Paris for study abroad, a friend of mine had to have an abortion, and I paid for her to have the abortion. And I remember that at the time, I talked to my mom, and I said, I want you to transfer money into my account so I can pay for my friend's abortion. And she fought me on it. But I finally said, look, it's my money, give me the money. And I helped my friend. So fast forward to, that was in college, and I had my abortion 4 years ago. And I remember the scariest part of the entire thing was that I was scared that anybody I told was going to reject me or be mad at me or be all pro-life at me, you know. And my mom especially, she just met me with unconditional love like she always does. And anybody I told that I was going to have an abortion or that I had had an abortion, I was just met with love and support. So I think the biggest fear about talking about this is how people are going to react. But here I am. So what happened 4 years ago, I was 40, and I was diagnosed about almost 20 years ago with endometriosis. So I pretty much used endometriosis as birth control for most of the past, at that time it was for about 15 years or so. I did use birth control. I am polyamorous, so I'm married to my husband, but we have other partners. I just don't use birth control with him. So I guess about 4 years ago, my hormones started changing. I got pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant. In retrospect, I feel kind of silly because I was, there were signs like the nausea and stuff at work smelled funny to me, and I had no idea what was going on, except for the fact that I was in a horrible amount of pain. And I went to my friend who was my acupuncturist at the time, and acupuncture didn't help. Western pain meds didn't help. I think it was my acupuncturist friend who said, is there any chance you might be pregnant? I'm like, I have endometriosis. I can't be pregnant. Right? Wrong. So I remember going to the Walgreens to get the pregnancy test and standing there for the longest time. Like, I knew I was pregnant. I didn't really need the test, but I knew it somehow. I was like, do I get the pregnancy test in a bottle of wine? Like, how am I going to do this? So I got the pregnancy test. I used it. I told my husband. The next day, I guess I called to get a blood test, and I went and got the blood test and confirmed, and went to see my gynecologist. And this is one of the not so happy parts of the entire experience, was that she tried to convince me not to have an abortion. I think it was pretty clear that was her set of values. She wasn't mean to me. She was working within her frame, her morals and her framework of what was right. And she kept saying, well, we can give you painkillers. We can give you this. And I said, look, you've given me painkillers and nothing has touched it. She sent me in for an ultrasound because she thought I was having an ectopic pregnancy. That's how my symptoms manifested. I wasn't having an ectopic pregnancy. I was pregnant, but nothing was wrong except for the fact that I was in horrible pain. Except for the fact. going for the ultrasound was horrible. I learned then to ask for help because I went to the ultrasound by myself. Couldn't find parking. Found parking, called the department, was like, look, I'm sorry, I just found parking, I'll be there soon, and went to get the ultrasound, and it was really, really painful. It felt like somebody was sticking shards of glass inside me, and the tech asked me if I wanted to see the ultrasound, and I said no. I think I may have tried to sneak a peek and changed my mind when they left the room, but I don't remember exactly. So, yeah, my husband and I went to see the gynecologist and said, I want to have an abortion. Or we didn't really see it as a choice so much because I was in so much pain. My husband really hoped that I would stop being in pain before the procedure, so miraculously I would not be in pain anymore and I could continue being pregnant, but there was no way I could do that for 9 months. And who knew if it was going to stay that way for 9 months, but for the 10 or 11 weeks I was pregnant, it was just unbearable. So she finally set me up with an appointment. And the doctor who performed my abortion, after I had the abortion and went back to get my IUD in, I asked her, as like, got up from the stirrups, I was like, will you be my gynecologist? Because she is so awesome. She's great. So the day I went in for the procedure, my husband went with me. He was there the entire time, held my hand through the entire thing. He was a rock. We get there, and the nurse calls me in finally, and I have to say also that I was doing this at a major medical institution, so it was completely different than when I was escorting an abortion clinic. When I was a clinic escort for women who were getting abortions, because there were no protesters. It was just walk in the door of this medical office, and nobody knows, right? It's just a gynecology office. Who knows what's going on? So I get upstairs, and so we're waiting in the waiting room for a little while, and the nurse calls me, and she said, the first thing she does is she yells at me. I'm like, excuse me? She said, we called you, and you're supposed to be here 2 hours ago. I didn't get the message. She had the wrong phone number. So that was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was we were sitting in the room filling out all the consent forms and stuff, and they just gave me the medication, and so I was getting a little bit loopy and dry-mouthed, and this doctor walks into the room, and she's like, hello, and she's all cheery, and she's happy, and she's realizes she's in the wrong room. Like, obviously, this doctor was supposed to be in the room with somebody who was pregnant and was going to have her baby. It would have been really comical if it weren't for the situation, I suppose. And she made her apologies and left. And so the only real thing I remember about being in for the procedure was that I think I remember pushing. I was just groggy and painful, and my husband squeezing my hand. And I'm wearing the hoodie right now that I wore to my abortion. It's from a pagan organization that I like in the Bay Area, and when I told people from that organization afterwards that I wore this hoodie to my abortion, they were like, there's a protection symbol on there. I said, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. So I felt comforted wearing this. It's still my comfort hoodie. So I went home, and friends of mine came over to make me tea and make me food and sit with me, and I think my husband had to go back to work. And I remember later that night when he was home and our friends were there and he was yelling about something, and one of our friends was like, "There will be no yelling today." No yelling, not today. And she's a friend who's had several abortions. And I was just so glad that she was there in that moment. I mean, I know it was stressful, and I know that he hasn't had a chance to tell his story. I don't know if he ever will, but and that's part of the sad part about it, is that he really wants kids. Or at the time he figured out, like, there was a real possibility when I was pregnant that we had both written off because of the endometriosis, and we just never talked about it because we assumed that I couldn't have kids. And now I can't because I've had my tubes tied since then. The IUD didn't work out for me. But my friends were amazing. You know, I have friends who sent me flowers, friends who couldn't be there for me in person. One friend sent me a shawl because she couldn't be there to hug me. It was really amazing. And I feel really fortunate that I had such a supportive experience with so much love. That's the one thing I wanted to get across, is that if you do tell people you've had an abortion or you're going to have an abortion, there is the chance to be met with love and support. If you get beyond your fear of, oh my God, if I tell this person, what's going to happen? And also that the more we tell people, the more likely there is for people to say, oh, I've had an abortion, or my sister had an abortion, you know. And so the next part, so fast forward a couple weeks, I wanted to do a ceremony to mark what had happened, really. And I remember that years and years ago, a friend of mine who had an abortion had written her blog about the Mizuko Jiso, the Japanese spirit that watches over the spirits of babies who have passed for whatever reason. In Japan, they don't separate out between abortion, miscarriage, stillbirth, whatever. And so I got this little jizo, which is just a little stone that an artist painted, and took it down to the water in the beach, and with some flowers I picked up along the way, and some rosemary, because rosemary is about remembering. And I just did a little prayers and stuff, and a friend of mine who was a priest helped me figure out what I was going to do before I went to the beach by myself. And so I got up months after that. I got up at a class I was at for healthcare workers about pregnancy and treating women during pregnancy, and told my story of doing the ceremony for myself at the beach, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. And afterwards, a doula I know came up to me and said, let's do this ceremony in San Francisco for other people. And so my friend who was the priest and this woman and I organized the spirit baby ceremony. And so we've done it at least once a year for the past 4 years. And it's an interfaith ceremony for people who have had pregnancy loss or people who can't have children for whatever reason. And it's open to people of all genders, you know. And try to make it as inclusive as possible for people to have a space to grieve, because there isn't a lot of space, you know, for people to talk about this, and I'm really glad that you're doing this project because it's comforting to hear other people's stories. It's not necessarily the happiest thing to listen to, but it's comforting to hear people's stories and like, okay, well, my situation was similar. My situation wasn't like that, and like, but it's important for those of us who have had abortions, I think it's important to hear about it, and I think it's important for us to talk about it too. I also feared during the first spirit baby ceremony that we would have protesters outside the church, like banging down the door, and that didn't happen. But I think there's just a lot of fear about that. For me, I have outside my house, I have a window box with plants. After each spirit baby ceremony, I take the notes that people have written to their spirit babies and I plant them. And this year, I planted them in my window garden. I'd never had a garden before that I tended. I usually have a black thumb. But I just like the idea of people's love and sorrow and hope and everything being able to grow. And I feel like every time I go water those plants, I'm looking at people's love. And it's beautiful. The other thing I've done is there's an art gallery that has a Day of the Dead exhibit. And last year they had altars for people. People can make altars for Day of the Dead. And I made a Spirit Babies altar there. And I'm going to do it again this year. And people can leave notes there too for me to take and plant them in the springtime. It's been although it was a very hard experience, I feel like having the abortion made me grow in so many ways that it made me grow spiritually. Like I feel like it's part of my spiritual mission to do this ceremony and to be able to give people space to openly talk about and ritually grieve with other people and in community. I think that's the important thing, is because a lot of times we're alone and we don't have other people to talk to. But in that ceremony, we get to be together with other people, maybe people we don't know, but and it may be for different reasons, different ways we've lost, but we're all there because we had a pregnancy loss or some kind of loss around pregnancy. So I did call an abortion hotline after I had my abortion, and I guess I got very lucky because it was actually a hotline to support people who've had abortions, not a right-wing fundamentalist Christian group that was trying to save our souls or anything. So it was Exhale, and they gave me the link to be able to go onto their website and join a chat room to talk to other women who have had abortions. And the great thing about that was it gave us a place to talk to other women from around the country and around the world. And we all had different experiences, and we didn't come from it from a religious point of view. People had different religions, people had different feelings about their abortions, but we all got to talk, and that online message board thing didn't last very long because it got so big that they couldn't handle it, so they closed it down. But I feel like what Exhale gave me was a different kind of supportive community. I'm still friends with some of the people from that message board. And then also gave me the place to find my voice to talk about this when I was ready to talk about it. I was interviewed last year for a friend's podcast. And I'm being so scared, like, what's going to happen when I do this? Like, and I talked to somebody from Exhale who has shared her story many times, and she sort of gave me like a pep talk before I went on, and it was fine, you know. It's such a relief to tell my story that the relief outweighs the fear of, you know, getting hate mail, I guess.
You talked a little bit about your husband and his support of you, but also his own experience within your abortion experience. Mm-hmm. So it was your experience together. Have you been able to talk to him about it, or has he been able to sort of process that experience?
So, I mean, I think he found a resource online that was an article for men who have been through, you know, supporting a partner during abortion. We've been to therapy together to talk about it a little bit. I don't know if he's ever like sat down with friends to talk about it. In some ways I feel like it was harder for him. You know, I didn't demand, but I needed him and my other partner to be with me at the first spirit baby ceremony. I needed to be there with them, holding their hands, or them holding my hand. So I don't know if that helped him at all, but and I don't know if this I think that this experience could break up couples, but I don't think it's not going to break us up. I think in some ways it made us stronger. You know, he always knew that it was really, I have said before that my abortion saved my life. I wasn't bleeding out. I wasn't, you know, I didn't have any organ failure or anything, but I felt like at any moment I could die from the pain. And he sees my abortion as saving my life. And so there was no other choice. But I'm glad we live in a world where we can't have the choice to have an abortion. I'm glad that I feel like I fought for women's right to choose. And then I'm glad that choice is available to me and to us when it came time that I needed it. There were times when I was still pregnant and I was walking around the park with my husband and my dog, walking the dog, that I think I had the idea of maybe if I wasn't in this much pain, I would continue. But I never thought I could have kids. So I just kind of like wrote it off, you know? My uterus doesn't do the, oh, cute little baby thing when I see kids. So, you know, I'm happy to help other people bring babies into the world as part of my job. You know, I love it when my patients call me and tell me they're pregnant. And I love helping prepare them for labor. But I don't feel like it's my path. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that the only time I really considered it was when my hormones were crazy when I was pregnant. And I feel like maybe in that parallel universe where I didn't have pain, maybe there is a little kid running around. During this hasn't happened for me during the spirit baby ceremony, but during ceremony Samhain, which is sort of a pagan Day of the Dead ritual. We have, in my tradition, one of my friends does a meditation where you get to go and talk to a deity who you prefer, or a deity you talk to, and they go and get the person or the spirit of the person you lost to come talk to you. And so I've seen my spirit baby a couple times during this meditation in the past couple of years, and so I know that she's with my cat and my grandfather. They're all together. And that makes me happy.
So your gynecologist was didn't want you to have an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to find someone else. To perform the abortion for you.
Yes.
How did you go about that, and how much did it cost, and how did you pay for it?
Okay, she just referred me to another doctor in the healthcare system, and it wasn't covered by the insurance, but I didn't know that until the bill came, right? I think it was about $700 or $800. That's what the bill was. It was one of those things we just paid off over time because we weren't expecting that. So, surprising. Now I know that it would have been cheaper if I'd gone somewhere else, but I went to my doctor. That's what doctors are there for, right? So, and okay, I think that answers your question.
You can go on if you...
I was going to say, and I found an amazing doctor, as a result of that, who is now my gynecologist, who, she successfully inserted the IUD, and then she performed the tubal ligation, and she's just very supportive of women and their choices, and I feel really fortunate to have met her. But I also sent a card to the other doctor when I fired her, and I basically said, look, I know you're working with the morals and the values you have, but I want you to know that this is how it affected me. I wasn't pissed off at her, but I was trying to come from a place of compassion and saying, look, I understand these are the tools in your box, but you're a doctor, and those more, I don't think that they have any place in what you're doing. So I had to speak my mind about it somehow, but I tried to be nice about it. So,
why do you want to share your story?
I want to share my story so that we end the silence about abortion in our culture. Really, it's the more we talk about it, the less of a stigma it'll be. And I don't believe that abortion should be a political issue. It should be a personal issue. And I think the more we tell our stories, the more personal it becomes. And the more people who don't have any exposure to abortion hear that somebody they know has had an abortion, the more real it becomes, and the more personal and the less political it'll be.
As always, for more information about the Abortion Diary podcast, visit us on the web at theabortiondiary.com or email me with your questions or comments. If you would like to share your story, send me an email at melissa@theabortiondiary.com or visit our website, click on Share Your Abortion Story, and fill out our contact form. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to help us reach more folks, please subscribe on iTunes and write a review or rate this podcast. Your reviews and ratings will help us grow in the iTunes rankings and reach more people. I would also love to hear from you. You can also follow The Abortion Diary on Twitter or Facebook. And The Abortion Diary can't continue without your support. Support the Abortion Diary by making a tax-deductible donation to us on Fractured Atlas, or buying some of our wristbands or totes on Store Envy. And a special thanks to you for listening. I'll be back next week with a new story.